So, in this video, we're going to be talking today about the Derrick Rose MVP, why he won MVP, and why it is absolutely crazy some of the revisionist history about this guy's MVP. What exactly was happening at the time, and why he obviously deserved this award. Like, there are MVPs that are debatable. This was not a debatable MVP. There was no debate, and you'll see it in the voting. 10 times out of 10, if this scenario happens, Derrick Rose is winning MVP. He's winning MVP nearly every time. It is just revisionist history why he did not win. The reason why Derrick Rose, a lot of people are like not impressed by his MVP was because of his stats. It is purely because of his stats. The season he won MVP, he averaged 25 points, 7.7 assists, 4.1 boards a game in 81 games. The reason why people are saying this is bad is because we saw Luka Doncic average nearly 10 more points, nearly 6 more rebounds, and 3 more assists, and not win MVP this year. But there's a difference. This was in an era where I don't think anyone this season averaged 30 a game. This was in an era where you could win the scoring title with 27 points per game. You could be a top 15 scorer in the NBA averaging 20 points per game. And I know a lot of people want to bring up the comparison of stats-wise with Monte Ellis, but that's just dumb. You can look back on other people's stats and say X player better than Y player. And that's the big problem with everyone having access to every box score. But the reason why the Chicago Bulls, or not even Chicago Bulls, the reason why Rose won MVP is because the Chicago Bulls won 62 games. So if you look, they won more games than the Spurs, who ironically lost to the 8th seed Grizzlies. But they won more games than the back-to-back defending champion Lakers and the Heatles. So the Chicago Bulls were supposed to be getting Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. The rumor was both of them were going to Chicago. And this was a Chicago team that instead of getting Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, they got Carlos Boozer. But this is a team where it's a hell of a lot. Like, look, this is a 62-win team. Ronnie Brewer was fine. Carlos Boozer was good. Not his all-star level good. It was 3 years after his last all-star appearance, but he was good. Luol Deng was an all-star he was an all-star. It was his 6th season. He was an all-star the next 2 years. Luol Deng was an all-star. You had James Johnson. You had a not young Kyle Korver, but a pre-prime Kyle Korver, which is crazy considering he was 30. John Lucas was just a good backup point guard for like whenever he was in the league. I think I got the wrong John Lucas. But Joakim Noah was kind of in his ascendancy. He was an all-star a little bit later. You had the GOAT Brian Scalabrine, and then you had Derrick Rose. So this was a team that people thought were going to be a playoff team, but no better. The previous year, they were a good team, but they weren't better than the Magic. They weren't better than the Celtics. They weren't better than the Cavs, who LeBron went to. And then LeBron went to what was supposed to have been an unbeatable team in Miami. So you're looking at this and you're looking at this team and thinking they were a good team. They won 2 rings in 4 years. And we have the benefit of hindsight now. We've learned more about team building, about roster construction, about analytics. And we now know that putting 2 of the top, let's just say 7 players. What am I talking about? Dwayne Wade was at worst the 4th best player in the world. 2 of the top 4 players in the world and a top 15 player in Chris Bosh. Putting them on the same team, people thought they were never going to lose. They were going to win more than 73 games. People thought that all you needed to do was get superstars together and you were going to win. People didn't realize at the time that they need to learn to play with each other, that they need to learn how to win together, that they need to learn who's going to do what, who's going to be the number one, who's going to be the closer, who's going to have to take a back seat to their stats. Because people saw it work with the Boston Celtics, but the Boston Celtics were all veterans. As much as Dwayne Wade had won a ring, these guys were all in their 20s. When it came to the Celtics, it was really their last chance. Kevin Garnett took a huge hit to his offensive game to become the defensive player of the year. Paul Pierce took a hit to his shots. And Ray Allen realistically just became that spot-up shooter. Whereas he was a do-everything scorer in Seattle. But it did take a while for these guys to figure out their roles. So much so they started 9-9. And obviously, after going 9-9, they went 47 and 15? Probably a better record after that than the Bulls, but it didn't matter. So Derrick Rose, when it came to the MVP voting, got 113 of the 121 first place votes. He got 113 of 121. Dwight Howard was second in the MVP race. You cannot rob an MVP when 113 votes are for you and 4 votes are for the other person. The only way that can be a robbery is in hindsight. He had 97%. Well, I don't even know what the share is. But like, he was almost at the maximum amount of points. Like, he wasn't that far off being unanimous. That is how dominant the Derrick Rose rookie year was. He was nearly unanimous. So, we need to stop this whole Derrick Rose did not deserve to win that MVP. Not only did he deserve to win that MVP, it was one of the more dominant MVPs I've seen in my lifetime. He had everything. He had the play. He was that guy. This was a phenomenon year. He was in his 3rd year. Derrick Rose had that, like, everyone wanted to watch him. He was that exciting, athletic player. He had the stats to back it up. 25 points per game is probably the equivalent of 31 right now. 7.7 assists is probably the equivalent of 10. Averaging 31 and 10 with 6 rebounds is probably his equivalent based on the pace of today's game. Is ridiculous. He had a team around him that was good, actually constructed incredibly well. In hindsight, a lot better than people gave it credit for at the time. But a team was not expected to be even close to the Heatles. And obviously, they had a better record. They won 62 games. As well as that, you had the narrative, him coming into the season saying, I'm going to be the MVP as the youngest, as a 20-year-old. No one ever says that and then does it. It had everything. It had the narrative. He had the stats. He had the team record. He had that excitement factor. This was as clear-cut an MVP as we've ever seen in history. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This was a clear-cut, obvious MVP. No debates at the time, as we saw from it being near unanimous. The only reason that there was even question marks at the time was the Eastern Conference Finals, where LeBron James guarded Derrick Rose and the Heat destroyed the Chicago Bulls. I don't think anyone at that time was arguing that Derrick Rose was a better player than LeBron James. But during that season, Derrick Rose was the best player in the regular season, and he was the MVP. No question about it. Derrick Rose was the MVP.